Okay, so in classwork number 9, just extend the radical. It was meant to be over the entire expression, 2x plus 3. Okay, so we're given f of x equals radical 2x plus 3. We want to find f of 1/2. Okay, so usually when we see these problems, as soon as we see f of x, we put that function into y equals. We go to the table and we find the value that we want. Now in this case, 1/2 won't be on our basic table because it's not a whole number, but we could work around that. So you basically have two options here. Let's start with the calculator and then we can discuss what might be an easier way to do it second. Let's start with what we usually do. We go to y equals, clear out what we have. Again, the radical sign is right above the x squared button. There's a radical sign in blue, so we're going second x squared. Okay, underneath the radical, we write in our expression, 2x plus 3. We go cursor to the right so that the radical ends. Okay, now what we normally like to do is go second table and find our value. The problem is that on a table, our table jumps from 0 to 1 to 2, right? At 0, we're at 1.7321. At 1, we're at 2.236, and it keeps going up from there. So if you see this pattern, because it's multiple choice, you might be able to figure out where we would be at 1/2 of all the choices, right? If it's increasingly going up, is there one of the choices that you can pick that would fit right in over here and would make sense in the pattern? Okay, so if you look at the choices, 2 is in between 1.7 and 2.2, right? It's going up by some small amount, right? It would not make sense among all these positive numbers to have negatives thrown in, right? It wouldn't make sense to have a 1, which is less than 1.7. So just by reasoning, you can get that your matching y value is 2. F of 1/2 equals 2. But another way that you can always do this, if your table is not including what you need, you go to the graph, and on the graph screen, you're going to press second trace. These are all your graphing buttons at the top. So above trace, you see it says calculate. We want to calculate any particular value. You see the first choice there says value? You can type in anything for x that you want. So we're going to type in 1/2. 1 divided by, to get that slash, 2. And when we press enter, it tells us what y is, and sure enough, look what y is. Y is 2. Okay, so by one of these methods, we can figure out f of 1/2. If you don't like any of this and it seems very confusing to you, then we can just do this the old-fashioned way. If f of x is this function, radical 2x plus 3, then for f of 1/2, all you're doing is, you see wherever you see x, instead of the x, you rewrite the whole thing, but instead of x, you open parentheses, fill in the value that you need, and rewrite the rest. If you're doing it this way, then you're doing it on a normal screen. And you're typing it in. Square root 2, instead of x, you're putting in 1 divided by 2, 1/2, plus 3, end it, enter, and you get the same answer either way. Okay, so you pick whatever you're comfortable doing in order to find f of 1/2. And again, the only reason it didn't work is because our table of values goes by whole numbers. So you might realize when you have to find part of a number that either you'll use the table anyway and approximate, or you go to graph, calculate value, or you'll just do it this way in a normal screen.